Welcome y'all to the Blackhoof Saloon, a Wild West Exodus podcast. Mosey on up to the bar and get yourself a bottle of firewater or a glass of sarsaparilla and listen to some good old yarns about adventures of law dogs, outlaws, and weird creatures. So set a spell, water your ride or your rider, and get ready to tune up your posses. This is the Blackhoof Saloon.
Howdy, howdy, buckaroos, and welcome to the Saloon. This is a podcast where a bunch of us are going to talk about the miniatures game Wild West Exodus, which is basically, it's a weird western sci-fi steampunky game. I am Eric, and with me I have Brian. Say hello, Brian.
Howdy, this is Brian Jedi Powell, coming from Houston. Welcome to the Black Horse Saloon.
And we also have Tom. Go ahead and say hello, Tom.
Hey, this is Tom, outside of Philadelphia. Welcome to the Saloon.
All right, so in the Saloon, we always have some sarsaparilla on tap, and we like to yammer on about stories of our games and whatnot. So what I want to start off with is the purpose of the show, and the show is just basically we're going to talk about the miniature game that we all love. I mean, whether it's going to be a battle report, or we want to talk about different topics of like today's topic, we're going to kind of introduce you to getting started into the game of Wild West Exodus, or it could be maybe a topic about a specific rule that's kind of hot on the forums or, on the blog post. And we're thinking about doing like hobby type talk, maybe have like a rotating chair where we have a guest in or something that's, kind of proficient in the, painting or building scenery or something like that. So one of the other things we wanted to open the show with is kind of how we all got into the game and what our go-to faction is. Why don't we start with how we kind of discovered the game. So the game was originally being published by their first owners, which was Outlaw Miniatures, and I know all three of us started when it was owned by the previous owner before War Cradle got a hold of it and kind of ran with it. So I was, out of the three of us, I was the late guy to the party because I got into it during their second Kickstarter. You guys both got into it early on, so why don't you, Brian, do you want to start off with talking about how you kind of discovered Wild West Exodus?
Sure. So I have been painting miniatures, but never really played any war games. So part of the hobbying I was doing, I was watching some videos from Geek and Sundry, and at the time they did a On the Table from Beast of War. So I'm watching that video, and they're like, "Oh, here's some games coming right now at Kickstarter." I didn't even know what Kickstarter was at the time, but I saw these pictures of Jesse James with cybernetic arms, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Let me check out this Kickstarter for Wild West Exodus. So I did. I saw that it was kind of a neat bunch of miniatures, and they were all really cool. And so in the back of my mind is those would be fun to paint. So I went ahead and put it up on my favorites bar and kept an eye on it over the month-long Kickstarter. About a week from the ending of the Kickstarter, I saw that they unlocked the lawmen as a mini faction, and frankly, seeing just Wyatt Earp with a shield, I was like, oh, I have to have that model. And the robot deputies, I was like, okay, that's going to be really cool. I got to get those two. And seeing Doc Holliday with his tuberculosis mask, I was energized from then. I picked up the phone and called my wife and said, okay, just don't get freaked out. I'm going to put a charge on the on the credit card that you're not going to make any sense of.
You don't want no alarms going off. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Right. Don't tell them it's a fraudulent charge because it's real. So and it just kind of steamrolled from there. But Lawman was the first faction that really caught my eye, and I jumped in, and over the course of the Kickstarter, they gave us ample opportunities to up our pledges, which I did. And so I came home with all the factions by the end of it. And at the second Kickstarter, I was blessed with the available funds to do it again. So I picked up all four of the other factions as well. And so, yeah, so Lawman is my true heart in the game, and the Order is a close second, just by the aesthetics. Really, it's a really cool faction. So,
Okay.
that's how I got in the game, and my two favorite factions.
All right, Tom, were you kind of similar thing the first Kickstarter?
Kind of along the same lines. Now, unlike Brian, I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember, back to being a little kid. But I spent a lot of time on Bartertown, and I would see all these things go by saying, hey, the Kickstarter for this, Kickstarter for that. What's this Kickstarter stuff? So I went online, looked up Kickstarter, started browsing through there, and it just happened to coincide with the time that Wild West Exodus had come up. And I've always loved cowboys and Indians, the old, John Wayne movies and things like that. So I went to check that out. I was like, all right, this looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll back this. Seemed like, ooh, that's a lot of money, but, we'll see what I can do with that. And as I was watching it, I was like, all right, this looks pretty cool. So I went and I sold off some of my 40K armies to fund this and got in with that. For me, what was really appealing was the Union and the Warrior Nation, because, like I said, to me, that was classic cowboys and Indians. You have the Union cavalry riding out of the fort going, to, fight the Indians is kind of what I had going on when I saw that. So as time went on, also I was like, started finding more about it. I was like, wow, the Warrior Nation's actually fantastic. They're really cool. But my first love there was the Union. I loved the idea of playing with Grant and with Sherman and Sheridan, that whole gun line idea. So I also I got every faction. And then I went a little extra heavy into Union and Warrior Nation. And then at the very end, when the extra little mini starter for Lawman came up, that was when I was really hooked, just like Brian. I loved Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday all coming out of there. And the UR30 bots were amazing. So obviously I had to pick those up. And over time, Lawman became my main faction as well. They overtook the Union, and I actually ended up selling my Union to keep up with the Lawman. And so Lawman have become my primary faction. I still have all my Warrior Nation. My son took those over, so he plays Warrior Nation. That's kind of how I got into it.
Okay.
The second Kickstarter came around, and I was already kind of invested in the factions I had, so I just picked up some pieces here and there, some of the limited edition stuff. And I didn't back any of the new factions there.
Okay. You're not as glutton as me and Brian, then, where you got to have everything.
My wife would murder me. So, not lack of desire, lack of, I guess I have sounder judgment. I don't know.
Hey, my excuse is I have very few vices. Evidently, this is one of them.
Well, I envy you.
All those money that I saved not going to bars with my buddies, I just spent it all
on the plastic.
You're right.
All right. Well, me, when I first got kind of introduced to Wild West Exodus, I totally missed the boat on the first Kickstarter. I think at that time Kickstarter was fairly, exclusive. It wasn't very, like advertised like it is now. You jump on Facebook and you always see pop-up ads. So I didn't find out about the game until the second Kickstarter at Adepticon, and walk around they would have the dealer booths, and I remember stopping and saying, "Oh, what's this? It's a Wild West game." I've always been attracted to Wild West movies and cinema and and stuff like that, because I growing up, that's what my parents watched. It was either John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. So I stopped to look at it, and and then find out that okay, it's steampunk. I liked the steampunk theme, and then throwing in kind of that Weird West, the sci-fi element. I thought that was really cool. So I did a demo. They handed me like the little postcard that they were giving out for the second one and said, well, go online and check it out type thing. And I actually still have that postcard somewhere. I think it's in my my bag that I carry my miniatures in. And so I went online, I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, this kind of looks cool. I think I'd give it a try. And at that time, I was pretty hesitant about Kickstarter because we were still trying to figure it out. So I think I ended up, by the end of that Adepticon weekend, I did, jump in on the on a pledge, and I ended up getting a 2-player starter. I figured I'll get the 2-player starter, try it out. I can play it with my son and see where it takes me. Well, in the course of the rest of the month, usually the Kickstarters go a month, watching it go, I just kept getting more antsy and antsy, where it's like, okay, I gotta have it now. I gotta have it now. Wanted more, and I ended up at that time. They had some of the new factions coming in, which would have been your Dark Nation. They had the Confederates coming in on that Kickstarter. Let's see, they had the Golden Army, and then they had the Watchers, which the Watchers were, your alien faction that a lot of people are going, nutso right now for. And I ended up saying, well, I'll get another faction. Something that really, jumped at my interest was the Confederates. So I put some more money in to get another, faction. So I ended up coming out of it with 3 factions. Well, in the whole process of waiting for fulfillment, I couldn't wait. And I ended up buying an Enlightened starter. And by the time the Kickstarter came, I already had my Enlightened starter built and painted and ready to go. And from there, I just kind of snowballed, where I kept getting faction. And, here's another faction. I'll get that faction. It was usually a certain model or something in that faction that caught my eye, like with the Dark Nation, for example. I mean, I got that well after the fulfillment and stuff, but these models they had in that faction, like, you big grizzly bear, werebear, and he's got a Gatling gun and stuff, that model's what drew me to the Dark Nation. Some of the story they had with, the characters in there drew me in. So, yeah, it kind of has snowballed where I have pretty much everything, too, and there's no going back. You just get it all.
Wow.
I know. I'll admit I do have a problem where I can't stop. I mean, I have blisters downstairs that are just, I have like a trunk like that I got at Michael's, and I kind of have a staging area where I put them all in this trunk, and then it's like, okay, and then I have a pile of like blisters, or maybe even like a box of hired hands or something sitting on my workbench. So I have a staging area where they make it to the workbench, I build them, then when there's empty space, I can go in the trunk and get something else and put it in the next spot. So I just kind of rotate them as I work.
Yeah, I can't get to that point. I've got everything built, so I have a case filled with half painted models and half just like primed, and I just stare at these unpainted models, going, "Wow, I got to get to them one of these days."
Right. So the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I had a big scheduled demo day at a store, and I told the owner, I'd bring everything, so anybody came, they can all see all the factions if they want to, and even brought my box of sprues and unbuilt resins. And when I got home, I was like, somebody else had posted all of their models, on a table. So I was like,
I remember those pictures. I saw those pictures, Brian. I was like, holy cow.
And then so I just kind of set them up on this table I have. It's like 4 feet long. So I'm like, I have 4 feet of models just stacked up, just standing up. Those are all the ones I've had built. And then I realized it wasn't all of them. I had done one afternoon, I'd knocked out, a full blister of Watcher hands, a full blister of the Savages hands, the full blister of the Caballeros. So I just done, so that's another 30 that weren't in those pictures. But that didn't include that did not even include another 6 sprues that I still had in a box, and the rest of my watchers and the rest of my Golden Army. And it also didn't include my Lawman faction, which was still in my outlaw case because there was no more room on the table. So it was like that was all but my Lawman.
I love how one afternoon I cranked out 30 guys. I'm like that's a year's worth of work for me.
I didn't paint them. I just built them.
Oh, okay.
You sure nobody was behind you with like a cat of 9 tails or something? Cracking that sucker.
Well, no, I've gotten pretty good. These the plastics are really good, so they go pretty fast.
So the mold lines are really, really clean, where there's not a whole lot that you have to clean up.
Right.
I still have problems though working on the hands, and I think it's because of the variety of them. They seem very samey, so it's hard for me to keep my focus through 5 of them, 10 of them to get them complete. I have to do like maybe 2 in a sitting, and then I have to do like a character, a face, a name guy. Right. Otherwise, I get bored with those little scrubs that you got to have, but they're just kind of, Right.
See, I don't think I've gotten to a set of the models with Wild Excessives where I've gotten bored. I typically, when I'm working on a set of hands, I'm new to the whole process of having to paint 10 guys who all look the same.
Yeah.
So that's what I struggle in is like, okay, I'll go and start painting all the blue on the model. And so, I got 10 models. I'm blue, 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 blue. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to put the tan. So I was tan, on down. And that's what slows me down. Or like when I work with my scouts aren't done because I base coated them. And then I was just tired with those colors. So then I was like, okay, I want to work on something different.
Yeah. I do.
So that's really I get tipped on is I'll be like, I'll get to a certain point and I'm like, I'm really tired of painting green. So let's just switch over to this other set. So right now I'm working on Warrior Nation hands, my Rebel hands, and these deputies that I've been working on this past week.
Okay.
But those are all in progress.
Well, that's one of the things why I like the Lawman is they're very face heavy.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to go through a whole lot of that. Oh, I'm banging out a bunch of the same guys. With the Union, it was like that. It's just blue, 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 blue. But at least even with the hands, you can make the hands they don't all have to be exactly the same. They're all sort of just thrown together out in the West somewhere. So you don't have to do the same colors across all of them. They don't have to match like some of the other armies do.
No, that's probably why I like my go-to faction has become the Enlightened, and that's one of the things I like about them too, is that you can give them a lot of variety, even in their hand units, because they're basically just Frankenstein monsters, and you give them that grotesque greenish pale skin, and then they have so much detail with stitch work or scars, or a lot of them have the machinery that once you start painting them, you can give them a lot of variety.
Right, and because they're animated corpses, they just raided the cemeteries, and everyone got buried in their Sunday vest.
Yeah,
which would all be wearing different clothes, which is how I did my outlaws. My outlaw bandits, they're all different. The only thing that unifies them are the bandanas, and I think they all wear the calf boots that have like the fabric from the knees down.
Oh yes, yeah.
So I painted that red and their bandanas. That it sets them okay. They're all one unit based on that.
All right. Well, that's kind of our little intro into the show and the 3 of our go-to factions and kind of how we discovered Wild West Exodus. So why don't we go ahead and we can move into one of our topics and we'll see where that takes us.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, let's go into one of our first topics that we wanted to cover with everybody out there. And we're going to cover game basics and what you would need to get started in the world of Wild West Exodus. Now, some of the things that there's a lot of returning people from first edition, so they have previous models from the first edition. And the nice thing about that is that War Cradle made those fully usable in the second edition rules. I mean, you do have to watch out. Some of the base sizes may have changed, but a lot of that information is online on their website. And you can find just about everything for free on their website. But let's go very basic and what you would need to get started. They have different box sets. So one of you guys want to go ahead and kind of start us off? Like if you're telling somebody what they need, what would you tell them?
So there's two ways to jump in. The first way would be a two-player starter set that they have. It's called the Fight of the Red Oak, and it's a small, mini faction for the Outlaws and the Lawmen, and it's a great way to start because it gives you a rule book, all the tokens that you're going to need, a template for the Blast and Torrents. It gives you a set of the adventure cards and a set of the action deck, and everything you need to really get a game started. Some assembly required, but it's a really good starting point, especially if you like Outlaws or the Lawmen, as it gives you Wyatt Earp, it gives you Doc Holliday, it gives you a set of 2 gun dogs and a set of 2 attack dogs, and Outlaws get Jesse James and Frank James, and then each of the Lawmen and the Outlaws get 1 light support vehicle. They're now called just support vehicles, and one is an Interceptor, and the other one is a Iron Horse. What's neat is because it's a plastic sprue, they also added optional heads for both the riders of these vehicles. It also, the attack dog and gun dogs have optional heads, so you can really get a pretty good variety as you pick up some more of these plastic canines. So it's a really good box set, and it's really a good place to start.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just saying, so if you already know a faction you want and it's not in the 2-player starter, they have starter posse sets, and they are posse set rule book and the gubbins and tokens and stuff. So instead of buying a 2-player set, you're basically picking your favorite faction and just going all in into one faction. And these posse sets are designed around the way 2.0 Wild West Exodus builds armies. So you pick a boss, and these posse sets have their go-to team. So these are the guys that narratively would be a good choice to bring with that boss. So you pick your favorite faction, like Enlightened, and right now they have the posse set called Father of the Enlightened that you can buy just a posse if you already have the rules from another purchase, or you can buy it as a starter set, and it comes with the Father of the Enlightened posse and a rules and gubbin set.
And then you just keep kind of building on to that posse with different dudes, basically, right?
Exactly. So you'll get a boss, a couple of faces, and some support models that, would work well with the theme of that boss. But then your next step would likely be pick up a box of hands that boss would work with, and or a box of vehicles to expand your army.
Okay. And now,
So
Dovetailing right into that is probably my favorite thing for the returning player.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
The Gubbins box.
The
This is one that I was constantly going, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And I'm very happy to have gotten it. And as Brian said, it's all the pieces you need. If you played first edition, you're coming back. You have all your models, and all you need are the bits and pieces you need to get playing again. You can just go out and buy a Gubbins box, and you get a little measuring stick and some tokens. You get your Blast Torrent template, your adventure deck, your action deck, your mini rule book, and some 10-sided dice. And it's really not very expensive, and it's pretty much everything you need to get going if you already have all of your pieces from first edition.
Right. I remember when it first announced, they were, we're having a rules and Gubbins set, and I was like, what's a Gubbins? Because I've never heard of the term.
Me neither, but I love it. I love that word. I don't know where it came from, but it's part of my vocabulary.
It's
now.
fun to say.
It is. It's a Gubbins. But one of the other things is from first edition rule, where I had spent weeks meticulously painting custom tokens to cover all the myriad of effects and counters and that you needed for first edition, and then second edition rolls out, and now there's 5.
Yeah, I do like that.
I still have this 50 tokens poker set of really meticulously painted tokens.
I had these really nice ceramic mini poker chips that Scott Whitebread had given me, and I just wrote whatever I needed on there with a dry erase. Those were my condition tokens.
That's the life of a gamer. Whatever you can use as a token, whether it's a popcorn kernel to a poker chip, if it tells you what status that figure is in, it'll work.
Exactly.
Well, one of the neat things I like that War Cradle did, these are, stuff that you kind of need to get into the game, and I briefly mentioned it earlier, and I mean, this could not just be for returning first edition players, but even if you're unsure yet, if you want to make that dive and get one of the Posse box sets or the 2-player box set or even just the Gubbins, they have on their website all the stuff for free download. Like you have your rules, you can download the templates, the whatever tokens that you would need, stat cards. All the stat cards are online to download. So a lot of that stuff you can go on their website and download for free, print it out on your home computer, or take it to a FedEx printing service or any other printing service. Print them out, and you can try it out. You can read through the rules, and it's not much of an investment to get into it. So I like that War Cradle was very open about, this is what we got. Try it out. If you really like it, dive into one of the sets and get the pretty stuff.
Oh yeah, and you can tell the new way to jump into the game is definitely triggering growth. Like it's exploding here and there all over the place, and in the last couple of months new stockist announcements left and right all over the Facebook. Even just got an announcement for near my neck of the woods with Space Cadets, now a official stockist of Wild West Exodus. So yeah, this coming weeks I'll be doing a demo day over at Space Cadets. Actually, the listeners, it may be after by the time you hear this, but real excited about that. And so yeah, the Houston area should be getting quite a surge of Wild West Exodus over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think with War Cradle starting, they got that momentum finally where it's starting they're getting that response back. They've gone to enough shows, and when they go to these shows, they're demoing like crazy, that enough people are being exposed to it now that it's starting to not be that so much that, I never seen that type of, game, that is getting a lot of exposure. So a lot of people are starting to take notice of it.
I think just you look at the pictures of their booth and everything else too. It just draws you in. There's a lot of excitement there. The way they have the whole walls set up with the pictures of the different characters and everything.
It's very impressive.
Full size, life size. It really is impressive.
Yeah, having seen the small version of their booth at PAX South, it was pretty awesome. Having been to Wild West Exodus events at Adepticon for the last couple of years, so have you, Tom and Eric. The effort that went into this is Wild West Exodus at a convention is changed a bit. And yeah, the big walled-in area, they have glass shelving with plenty of painted models and all the new prototype models, and people just gawking, and then of course having the new boxes and merchandising all set up. There was a crowd there all day that I was there. It was crazy. And what's funny is that was Saturday, and the next day that I wasn't there, Sunday, they said Sunday was even busier.
Oh my god!
And there's like 5 of them that flew over from England to support PAX South, and they literally ran 3 demo tables nonstop. And they had
that's a good
2
sign.
extra people, and they would tag in anytime someone needed a
tag me, bro,
break.
tag me.
Well, I mean that's really impressive too. Sundays at cons are usually kind of everyone's tired out and leaving, and they're kind of down days. So to hear that they had such a good response on a Sunday is really fantastic.
Well, I have a feeling that with Adepticon coming up, I mean, that's going to be my next opportunity to actually see them in a booth and, showing the game off and stuff. I have a feeling I'm going to have a hard time getting out of that booth without, at least 2 bags of stuff, because you can't resist it.
Right. And a little bit later when we talk about the news, maybe we'll have some good information about what to expect from Adepticon. I know some of the newer releases that are just now coming out should likely be there, and they'll be flying out of there like crazy.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to go by the booth like the first day. Otherwise, there could be that chance that they sell out. Because, I mean, realistically, how much stuff can they, bring with them from the UK? I mean, it's got to be kind of pricey to ship all that stuff over here. Right.
Well, I believe some of the stuff is actually remaining in North America.
Ah, okay, for the distributors and stuff like that.
Right. Well, I believe they've worked some kind of secret deal, like as typical of the Dark Council, so that stuff doesn't have to be shipped back and forth. So, not going to reveal the secrets, but yeah, that some of that stuff is staying on this side of the water.
Well, all right. So that's kind of the game basics. What you guys would need to get into the game. There's a couple different options, like we listed with the box sets, posse sets, or just going online and downloading for free. Do you guys kind of want to give a broad overview of the factions? Just real brief, quickly, to maybe give some insight to everybody out there. A generic way that a faction plays. I mean, there's quite a few of them. They have combined some of them, but Brian, you want to start us off with maybe, I think I know what your favorite faction is, but I'll let you start that one off.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I'm pretty well known as being a lawman faction fanboy, evidently. It's my favorite faction. It's what lured me into the game originally, so just been pretty consistent in snatching up everything lawman that comes out. And the neat way they've done the factions is each posse boss. So each boss now in the game gives you a different option how to play your faction. So, same with the lawman. You can, really go different locations. You have White Earp. He brings his Tombstone posse, so you can make a very cinematic themed posse by bringing in the foursome from the original OK Corral. You can also obviously enlarge that with picking up Warren Earp a few other faces, squeeze them in, and obviously pick up some deputies. Would be really neat. Hard hitting with Wyatt's, pistols and shotgun. Then you got, Doc Holliday with his pistols. One of the neat things about the posse also is you can bring a boss with Tombstone, which allows you to bring in one of the other bosses, which is Morgan Earp. And as you know, Morgan Earp, during the fight at the OK Corral, he gets shot. The aftermath to that event, he gets shot in the back. Virgil, of course, gets freaked out and drags his baby brother out to Doc Carpathian, and Doc Carpathian fixed him all up. So now he's, half robot and one of the boss options. He has an affinity with the robot deputies. So his theme posse, called Armored Justice, is definitely centered around bringing UR-30s and 31s into a posse. And the synergy there is definitely worth bringing them, Morgan, in with a group. He has a legendary model that you can also pick up, and brings out a huge armor version of Morgan, which is quite hefty. Let's see. After that, you can bring in Tribal Alliance with Bass Reeves, and Tribal Alliance with Bass Reeves allows Bass Reeves to bring in some, Warrior Nation models into the posse. I believe when they came out with that posse build, I was like, that is so cool. Also with 2.0, Apache Kid is now also playable in Lawman factions, and is also one of the first options in the posse build. So you have the man who inspired the Lone Ranger in Bass Reeves, and you can bring along Indian Scout like Apache Kid, and a bunch of other Indian hands and stuff to really throw a curveball into a pretty good match. Then you got the iconic judge, jury, and executioner with Judge Stern, and his posse is quite interesting because there's a lot of affinity with bringing in some of the civilian models and the mob rule kind of tactics. The only downside of that is there's only 6 unique civilian models, so we get a chance to get really creative and bring in some civilian models from outside the game, so you can really outfit that posse with all the extra civilians you can bring along.
So the law basically has a lot of those cinematic characters that we know from history or from the movies, actually, that are, your law dogs, your guys with their 6-shooters, and they're coming into town, bringing hell with them, as to quote a quote. And I mean, they're not overly shooty, but you got your different elements that you could go, right? Am I kind of fair saying that, Brian?
Right. So the Lawman faction now is extremely face heavy. So most of the builds, you're kind of pushed into bringing faces. They have some great hand options, but for the most part, you're encouraged to have numerous hands in each of your posses.
All right, Tom, you want to pick one of these ones?
Yeah, I'll just follow up on the Lawman too.
Okay.
They may say that there's really no good guys in this game. The Lawmen are the good guys.
Well, obviously.
As far as other posses, I've always been kind of partial. I'm also a Lawman player, but I've also been very partial to the Union over time. So I'd gotten rid of my Union a while ago, and now with what they've done with them, I'm looking at maybe picking them up again. So kind of regret getting rid of those now. They're put together into a couple different ways, like all the posses are. You have different bosses that lead up themed posses. You have things like the Secret Service that goes along with Abe Lincoln, which has all sorts of agent hands and agent faces, and the hands that'll go along with them. Again, it's a very face-heavy posse, very similar to what the Lawmen do. The one I find most intriguing there, which I haven't tried yet, but I really want to, is the Willa Shaw posse, which is a cavalry posse. You can basically put together a fully mounted posse, which I really am curious to see how that's going to work out. I don't know if you guys have played with or against that yet.
I have played against
I have
it,
not.
and the player that I played, it kind of built on that, her being on the mounted, zipping around there, and they took some other vehicles to support her, and it was pretty tough to contend with that, with them constantly moving, kind of like circling sharks. They just kept driving around me and just picking at you, picking and shooting and picking, and eventually it's just it wore me down.
Right. Well, in some of the newer updates for the Union, it's just going to get worse because now Custer is also going to be a Wrangler, so you'll be able to mount him with his 8 fortune, and his posse is extremely hands heavy. Well, they made another change, and now the mounted cavalry iron horses for the Union will be hands.
Okay.
So
wow, that's
he's
fantastic.
He's going to be able to do the same thing. So both Willishaw and Custer will be able to field fully automated cavalry.
Wow.
Which should be equally frightening, especially if you go in a big game and they decide, hey, Willa and Custer are joining up. Oh,
yeah.
no.
Do the double boss list. Ugh.
All right, I'm going to have to get back into these guys again, I guess.
Oh, no, look what I started.
Way to cost me money.
That's what we're here for. It's support.
And for those Union Secret Service guys, Stuart was revealing online some names of future models, and one of them definitely kind of rang as a nod to one of the Secret Service sketches that we saw at one of the previous Adepticons or Gen Cons, where they showed a bunch of artwork, and it was the rocket launcher guy. So I have a feeling he is upcoming sometime soon in a Secret Service kind of posse set, would be epic and awesome.
Well, all right, Eric, what about you? What do you like playing?
I think
I already know the answer to that. But
yeah, I think I'll go with my first love. Making man better through science would be the Enlightened. The Enlightened, the way they play, they're actually going to be the only faction. I mean, I kind of look at them as being your typical undead faction that a lot of games have. I mean, they're not undead, but they're actually just reanimated through science. And the Enlightened are one of those factions that it's the only faction in the game that you can actually bring back models after they've been gunned down and stuff in one form of another, whether it's bringing them back as a hex beast or even just resurrecting them. There's a couple of the bosses like Dr. Carpathian who can spend some of his fortune to take an action to basically, those guys, when they've been gunned down, they don't get removed from the table. They just lay there, and he kind of reconstructs them. He fixes them well enough that they can keep marching on and fighting for him. So, I mean, the Enlightened they're very heavy, and those big, tanky, disposable, they have the tanky constructs, but they do have the disposable, little nameless dudes, too, that will, get in front of him and kind of protect him. So a big part of their strategy is keeping him around all his creations so that if somebody's shooting, he has basically cannon fodder to absorb those shots so he can do what he needs to do to achieve the goals of different scenarios and stuff. And, I mean, like many bosses, they have, your variety of, you want, a boss that's like him that has all his little tricks and stuff to keep him alive. Or you got a couple guys that are, you can go melee heavy. They have Eiffel, who's basically a big spider that if he gets close to you, he's going to tear into you with his claws and, his spider legs and just rip through you. And then they also have bosses like Cam, who's kind of your speedster, and he's one of the few guys that he actually has like a jetpack, so he can do a special move where he's flying across the board, ignoring, the buildings and cover and stuff like that. And he's got a face that goes with him that's a Hellion that's actually very similar, has wings, he flies. So you got basically a flying Frankenstein construct dropping from the ground, or from the sky, and he's going to tear into you with his claws. And then they have a couple other bosses, like you can actually take Virgil into the Enlightened because of his deal with Dr. Carpathian to give him back his arm after he lost it. So there's some variety depending on how you wanna, what is your play style. I mean, we have the Countess now, that's one of the newer bosses, and then they have Edison, who Edison in first edition was just a face, but now he's a boss, and they're still kind of developing his theme posse and exactly kind of how he works. So I mean, a lot of these factions, it's kind of what's your play style. Do you want to be a shooty type posse, or do you want to be kind of like a melee, or do you can mix. That's one of the nice things I like with the different choices of the bosses, what kind of hands or faces that you can take to kind of supplement what that boss does best, or maybe that boss doesn't do something, so it's like, okay, let's take this unit into the posse to kind of help round it out.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that posses now are different within the factions. In first edition, each faction had an identity. The lawmen were the tough ones; they were the hardest to kill. The Union were the shooty guys. Warrior Nation were the close combat guys. Enlightened were the tricksy guys. Instead of having that now within an individual faction, you have a posse in there that might be a shooting posse, and you have another posse that might be a close combat posse. So within any faction, you can find a play style that suits your needs.
Yeah, it's definitely not just one play style where you get stuck in kind of, okay, this is how you play them. If you don't, that's all you can do. Now they really do have variety of flavor. How do you want to play?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Brian, you want to take another one? What's the next one you want to talk about?
Oh, let's see. Well, we can talk about the Holy Order. That's my second favorite.
Okay.
Posse. Holy Order is in 2.0 is basically what we know about the Holy Order in the first edition was basically just like a tip of the iceberg. And as the war with the Hex or the Dark Nation continues, the Holy Order enters new phases, and these new phases cause large chain reactions within their own structure. So in the first version, the Spica and the bosses, Abner and Nura, they're actually humans who've been involved in the Holy Order of Man for years, and their ancestors have been passing down this knowledge about the war, and they've been developing these pieces of technology through basically memories that their ancestors have been shared, but it's only been parts and pieces. And it's not until they put the parts together do these relic weapons and vehicles truly take shape, and then now they're useful centuries later, even though some families have been passing on the knowledge of how to build the circuit that powers the device, and another family knew how to create the focusing lens of the device, whatever. So through generations, all these technologies are developed, but they don't really have any understanding of what they're doing. It's all been through memories and dreams, and they build all this stuff, but they know why. It's this fight that they're participating against this dark force that's on the planet. So that's like phase 1 and 2. Okay. Phase 3 then starts new stuff. So your first couple of bosses, they're human. All their soldiers are human, and they've just been trained in the ways of the order. But then the next phase, things get ramped up a little more, and that's when it's revealed that the next boss that we've seen that hasn't showed up is one of the Kokoroli. And the Kokoroli are basically human that has now been inhabited by an energy being of the order. And the order is what's behind the holy order of the man is the order, which are energy beings that have centuries and thousands of years ago became enlightened to the point where they lost their physical forms and they became energy beings. They encountered the dark essence that is the Hex and the Dark Council, and now they're in this eons old fight where they're trying to destroy this dark force because they are so enlightened that they know they need to destroy this evil. The only way they can do it is by whispering to inhabitants of the worlds that are being tainted, and then eventually they gain more of a foothold through the different phases. So phase 3 is when they first start imbuing their life force into human hosts, but the energy can't be contained in a frail human body. So that's what the armored forms of the new order models are. So they're a little bit bigger because the bodies are getting a little too expansive based on all this energy that's now imbued in their frail little bodies. So the armor is encased there to keep them from burning up and dying. So you'll see all the Kokorali have now going to get new models, and they're going to be bigger. So the size is increasing on all these models, and the old models are just not going to be used anymore because they'll have brand new, larger formed. Just so we know, hey, this is a Kokoroi. Well, obviously, it's bigger than everything else. All the models will be on medium bases or larger, and they're just elite fighting units. So the whole faction is made up of elite units. So the Spica are human elites. Kokoroi are just one step above that, and they're just like monstrously armored and big weapons, lots of neat little things. Some of the neater new weapons are they've got some chain attacks that you can drag opponents with. Those two new models in the ranks of the Kokoroi really should be entertaining. Obviously, this is where the portals first jumped into the game with Salto, and so Nura is now a part of the posse that uses portals, and she even has her legendary form, and she has mastery of portals herself. So that with the different posses, those are one of the key things that she can do. Makura is just going to be a hard-hitting monster centaur-shaped model. Can't wait to see that model come out because I will be buying that. And there's just so much more that's coming for the order that Stuart can just tease and stuff, and all we know is he's not telling us everything yet. So, as the phases of the order continue to move forward, we'll see some even crazier things come out. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure he'll tell us soon.
Soon, yeah. Stuart soon.
All right, Tom. You're up. What do you want to cover?
I guess we'll go Warrior Nation, since that's the other faction that I have living in my house right now.
Okay.
Warrior Nation has undergone quite a few changes, actually. How it originally was there were a couple of major bosses. There was Sitting Bull and Geronimo. They have had name changes. They are no longer Sitting Bull and Geronimo. They are Raging Bear, and I believe it's Spirit Wolf. Is that his name? Ghost Wolf.
It's Ghost Wolf.
Ghost Wolf, or as I also like to call Geronimo. Sorry, Raging Bear. He's my grumpy bear.
Yeah,
and I've painted him as such.
His big white belly with the rain cloud.
He does. He's wearing a chest piece, so I had to have the rain cloud hearts kind of pouring out from behind the chest piece. But it's all there. But the Warrior Nation posse faction was really, really interesting, as they didn't really draw their power the way all the other factions do. They got their power from nature, essentially, the Great Spirit. And it was shown in the comics and as in the novels and such as a blue glowing energy instead of the red that we would normally see from RJ. And this gave them the power to have, at least their most powerful warriors, could change forms. So they were essentially were animals. So you have Raging Bear is obviously he turns from a human into a giant bear. Ghost Wolf turns into, he's essentially a werewolf, which is pretty awesome. He's got some great models for him. And then there is Irontooth, who is sort of a cougar, cougar, I guess you would say he is. Then you have some other guys who just wield the power of the Great Spirit. So you have guys like Raven Spirit, who's that cool model where you see the little guy inside the big spirit rising out from around him. And they channel these energies and they control them, and they can call apparitions or throw fireball little things. So it's just a whole nother take on the energy that gets used in the world of Wild West Exodus. So I don't know if you guys want to jump in on this. I have. So the Warrior, I have them in my house, I really haven't gotten to play with them yet.
So the Warrior Nation,
not this edition,
are like one of those original ones that it's probably the most popular faction that's out there. And something that to make note is that they're the kind of faction that they're very melee heavy, where they're a lot of hand-to-hand combat type guys. And something that I know one of our players in our local area, he plays to, is their totems. So they can kind of jump around the table with these totems, kind of like portals in a way. So they can be pretty fast-moving units that all of a sudden they're on you and they're tearing into you with their energy weapons.
Right. So one of the bosses, the Raven Spirit, he and the spirit priest, they have a really good affinity with the totems, and they can teleport through the totems, and so can the spirit apparitions. So yeah, it can be quite deadly option for Warrior Nation. One of the other new bosses is Walks Looking, and she is definitely a melee posse. Some of her go-to people are also melee crazy, like White Buffalo, but she also has a little bit of help with the sniper, Little Claw. Is Little Claw the sniper? Right, but that posse is available out right now.
You mean Raven's Eye?
Raven's Eye. Little Claw, I think, is the
Lady of the West,
second edition of Lady of the West, and I believe she's also a melee heavy model as well. But yeah, Warrior Nation has always been a hard hitting. It has not changed in the 2.0. That's
it's tough to stay away from them with the totem. The power of the totems, and I mean, a lot of times when I played against them, it's like my opponent's dropping those, he's seeding them around the board, and it's like, okay, that one is like almost right on my deployment zone, so it's like I kind of immediately go after those things to take them out, because they're pretty easy to shoot and destroy. But otherwise, it's like, if you don't, they're going to be on you, like I said, really quick.
But it also distracts you.
Yep, go ahead.
It also distracts you, giving them a chance to run up.
Yeah. Which I've seen that happen too.
And it's not always easy to get line of sight on those little totems. A smart player can kind of squirrel them away into spots that you kind of have to circle around to get at them.
Yeah. Kind of hiding in like some crates or something that's like next to a building or on the street, or in some some of the terrain like rocks or trees or whatever.
Exactly.
All right, I think I will cover probably one of the factions that kind of was one of my I couldn't wait for my regular posses. Like I kind of flip-flopped a lot between the Enlightened and the one I'm talking about is Outlaws. We're kind of sticking with some of the original ones. And one of the things I like about the Outlaws is they're kind of your jack of all trades. They don't do any one thing fantastic. They do kind of like everything, whether it's your shooty guys or your melee guys. And something that kind of is interesting that happened with the Outlaws is they have the most variety in the game, because they kind of absorbed in 2nd edition your Golden Army, which is your conquistadors, or the other side of the Golden Army were your banditos and stuff like that. And they also absorbed the Confederate Army. So And a lot of the mercs are also in the Outlaw, so it gives you a lot of variety when you are doing posse building. I mean, some of the big names that's kind of goes along with, like, you know, your lawmen. You have, you know, your very historical characters. The Outlaws have, like, your Jesse James and his, you know, the James Gang, and you got Billy the Kid, and I love the Johnny Ringo model that they have for the game, where, you know, he's got all attitude. He doesn't have the shirt on. He's just got his duster out, and he's just like bringing it. You know, you have with going to the Golden Army, you have your conquistadors, like I brought up. You can, if you wanted to not do Ponce de Leon, you could do your banditos with them. Or one of the factions that got absorbed in them that I like were the Confederates. But they kind of changed them a little bit, where they're more of your... They're kind of like your snipers, and they're kind of, you know, they hide, and they play like your guerrilla tactics type thing, where they need cover to really be a force to reckon with. So there's a lot of options, or a really lot of options with the Outlaws in the second edition. They have so much that you can build from.
Right, and that's the one thing about the Outlaws is it is the faction to get lost in.
Oh my God! Yes, yes, it is.
You know, if you love
easily.
models, that's your faction, because you can buy so many models.
And I mean, there's some cross factions that fit in there. I just scrolling through some of the models. There's actually some enlightened guys that are in there that are, like, you know, in some kind of partnership with the Outlaws because of one reason or another.
Right. So Cam is a boss that will actually, you can do Outlaw with. And then some of the mercenary bosses that we're going to see, Marcus Wayward and Earl Shepherd, who bring the iconic posses of theirs into several different factions, which is nice because they're mercenaries.
Yeah.
So I'd say by the end of the year, the Outlaws will have the most numerous boxed posse sets that you can pick up.
Well, there's so many. There's so many ways you can go. Like I was saying, you know, you could do your straight Outlaws with all your little outlaw names like Billy the Kid and stuff like that. Or you could do your Golden Army like Pancho Villa. You know, he's one of the guys you can take for the Golden Army. There's just so much flavor. It just baffles me.
Yeah. So the next two are some of the more interesting and dynamic faction options. So why don't we start talking about the Hex? So I mentioned the Hex when we were talking about the Order. So the Hex is 2.0's version of the Dark Council, which in the first version was just models that you can bring on the floor that you can use as the dark influence. It really... that we really way of influence your battle. So it was, you know, an ominous thing, but it wasn't really an actual faction. There weren't any models that you really craft in the game. So in the 2.0, they said, no, let's make the Hex an actual, you know, faction, so people can get excited about actually being this interesting new faction that they've created. So what they did is they merged all the dark, omnipotent, splintered entity that is scattered all over the earth trying to survive the war with the Order. So what it does is when it gets here, it either is already a full entity and then it starts corrupting, goes around and trying to influence the world, but they take physical form. So that's how you have, you know, the Third Man, you have Marie Laveau, who actually, through the influence of the Dark Council or the Hex, but she was already a monstrous form here on Earth. But now she's involved with them. She's gaining more power and really coming to her own. And so she has two models, one of which is her Voodoo Priestess model, which is her normal model. But then she has her legendary pose, which is her actual normal form. So the human form of hers is the altered form, but because the monstrous form is so big, it's considered her legendary model. And she is just one of the coolest looking models. And if you really just want to paint really awesome models, Wild West Texas is obviously the place to go because they have so many really epic cool models. But that one is really just creepy, and she's ripping apart a spica. It's just really a cool model. Then, some of the other options of the hex are the Carcosa Rex, which is the Minotaur Dark Nation model that we saw in 1.0 after the second Kickstarter. His previous name was Big Bighorn, but now he's Carcosa Rex. He's another one of these dark entities taking physical shape as this tainted wereboar, and he is just really cool. One of the things his posse set kind of alludes to is more Carcosa type monsters, which is in that list of soon to come to us. So that's going to be neat seeing some of those models come forward. One of the Dark Nation, tainted Warrior Nation-esque type models in posses is Cassansi, and she is the dark half of Walks Looking. So in the fluff, she Walks Looking, the daughter of Ghost Wolf, she succumbs to the taint of using these altered weapons and all the dark powers that spew out of this RJ 1027. But when that happens, Ghost Wolf mounts a rescue and succeeds in doing a ritual that splits that dark taint from her soul. Doing so, you have now both in existence. They're not fully formed, but they both are in physical form on the world. And Cassansi is all evil. There is no glimmer of good in her because Walks Looking is now void of all the darkness. So she's not whole, and Cassansi is not whole. So they have this urge to consume the other. And so just that dichotomy of those two wars is probably cool. I can't wait to see a new future novel describing how this all is going to come about. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the Dark Nation part of the Hex is kind of what recently has been drawing me into it, with like that story of the split soul, and they're not complete characters. They will only be complete if they kind of overtake the other half.
Right, it builds this epic battle that we actually get to participate in on the table.
Yeah.
Well, it's really cool too because she was one of the feature characters right from the very beginning. So to see her story progress is really great.
All right, and then one of the last ones we have is the Watchers. And the Watchers are basically, if you want to play cowboys and aliens, I mean, that's basically what they are. Is they are a hard-hitting force that, they have not as many tricks, so to say, to keep them alive, but what they got is like shields. They bring, superior weapons, which are very hard-hitting. And they actually are going through a lot of changes right now. We should be seeing a new posse set for them soon, right, Brian?
Oh, yeah. It actually should be available in the store now. And it's the Viridian Clade posse set with the Viridian Alpha. It's going to have two betas. And they basically, the box allows you to build two different kinds of Viridian soldiers. In the art book, these would probably have been what you would have considered the skinnies if you have the art book from the second Kickstarter. And they have different weapon layouts. So whether they would be, the actual name of them is fleeting, but they're like Locust or...
It's a Chigo or something like that. I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Yeah, it's alien language, so obviously, us humans have trouble saying it. But yeah, so there's two different versions of the actual troops that you can build in there. So, and Stuart's already said that you'll be able to buy those troops separate, so you can build up the posse by buying those small sets. So that way you can outfit both kinds and really build on your force after you buy the posse set.
Yeah, and right now I think is that the smallest posse? I mean, the smallest faction out there.
Yeah, I think it might be where you don't have as many models, but they're kind of your strong, beefy models.
Right, and it's I think they have a lot of plans for them. We know of at least 3 different alphas that'll be coming out for them. Obviously, they'll have the posses that go with them.
And I know this is a faction that's been getting more and more popular in my area. People are really starting to, get attracted to them and try to and figure them out, just because they're the kind of faction that it's so different to see down on a Wild West table. But I mean, it goes in with the whole, we have this the Weird West, the sci-fi element of the game.
Yeah, and they are very cool looking.
Right. So the way the Watchers are is they're basically a alien force that has been collecting different races, and each race is a separate style of unit in the game. So that's what you'll see is you have the Viridian Clade posse is the races would be considered the Viridians. Then you have the bug-like scarabs, and then they're king scarab, so they're a different race altogether. And then you have the grays, that's a separate race, and they're basically your foot soldiers. But yeah, the Chigo and the Locusts are basically Viridian soldiers, but they're a higher level than what they would consider grays, and that's why they're different. And then you have some of them, like the Destroyer model is a completely different race, and so they have different abilities. We have the Onyx race, and that's one of the neater things is having seen a list of all the different future races and models is really it's eager to see what the next kind are going to do. It's going to be really
well. All right, that kind of brings us to a wrap up of our game basics of what you need to get started, and we kind of went over all the different factions that you can pick from and kind of what they bring, what kind of characters and play style. So stay tuned. We got more coming up for our topics and news, and we will take a little break here and get back with you. Howdy, gang. In this segment, we're going to talk about some news. And the news basically is going to cover product that's new or coming out, like little previews that War Cradle has released on their Facebook page or on their website, and basically anything that pertains or kind of relates to the world of Wild West Exodus. So one of the first things we want to bring up that everybody should kind of watch for, pay attention, and look for are some con dates that are coming up that War Cradle is going to be appearing at. They're going to have a booth at and be giving anybody that wants them demos of the game. And you can also find product at their booth at these little cons that you can pick up. One of the first dates, we have something coming up real soon. It's a Saloon. And that's going to be April 14th in London. So go ahead and check them out there if you've never done a demo, or if you just like doing demos, and go by, say hi.
right. And Stuart's been saying that they're going to have some announcements leading up during the week on the way to Salute, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes out.
Yes.
Either for Dystopian Age or Wild West Exodus next week. So I know I've been kind of eager to see what comes next.
Get some new juicy news.
That's right.
What next date do we have, Brian?
Okay, well, Daz, War Cradle, and the gang have a Trailblazer scheduled for the Hammerhead show. That's at Newark Showground in Newark, United Kingdom, so it's in the UK again. That's going to be on April 28th. It says 4 a.m. CDT, but I doubt it starts at 4 a.m. So that's probably just one of those things for us being over on this side of the water. But.
Yeah. All right, and then they got coming up in June, they have the UK Games Expo. That's June 1st through the 3rd in Birmingham. That's also another UK date, so all the UK fans of Wild West Exodus can go there and check them out there.
You skipped another Trailblazer.
Did I skip a
May
Trailblazer?
19th.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll spot it.
I can't drive to that. I guess that's why.
And that's going to be in Reading, UK, at Eclectic Games. The gang is going to tear it up over at Eclectic Games again. So those in the area of Reading, UK, definitely go swing by and check it out.
And that was May 19th, you said, Brian?
Yeah, May 19th. And then UK Expo, like you said, is in June.
Okay.
And then I'm sure there'll be some other Trailblazers going on. It's just they haven't posted them up yet.
Yeah, those are...
If you're...
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, if you're a game store that wants a Trailblazer, just contact War Cradle Studios, and they'll get you scheduled up, and they'll bring a team out there and do demos, and they do painting demos, game demos.
It's kind of a neat concept they have with the Trailblazers, that they'll go anywhere to your little local club or store and show you how to play the game, and just get people introduced to the game. It's a really neat concept.
Oh yeah, the last big we got the last big U.S. con will be Gen Con.
That's kind of in my backyard. That's like 3 hours away from me. So that is August 2nd through the 5th in Indianapolis, Indiana. Yeah, that's usually a pretty big one. Last year was their first time at Gen Con, and the booth, they went all out for the booth. It was huge. And
right, yeah. So that's the booth that they'll have at Salute. That's like their standard big con booth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be kind of a big one. I was at PAX South this year, and they did come out for that, and it was a smaller booth than their big Salute booth, which I think it's twice the size. So
yeah, the big one, they usually bring out the big displays for that one.
Yeah, well, what's neat is what's different from what they had at PAX was they actually brought their digital guy, and he actually sat at monitors and actually digitally sculpted stuff while people were wandering around, poking their nose in the booth, and that is pretty cool.
Yeah,
to actually see them working on models and stuff. So I think they did that at Gen Con as well, because I remember seeing them working on Makora and some of her Core Caroli sculpts. And that was pretty cool.
The last date I have for appearance by them is the Tabletop Gaming Live. That one is September 29th in London. And that is actually the last announced date that we have that they're going to be appearing at. Besides, like you said, some more Trailblazer Tour stuff. Yeah, go check them out. Get in a demo. And just stop by, say hi. You can get some tidbits. They're, as Brian said, they may release some little breaking news or maybe stuff that's in the pipeline that may be an important announcement in their games. So, all right, next in the news, something that we want to talk about is Stuart is pretty notorious for giving the community teasers, whether it's through a random picture he's posted online, or I think he's mentioned things in some of their live streams that they've had, where some of the new posses that are in the works that should be coming out soon, or that they're just in development. We've seen 3D renders of some of these on their Facebook page, so I just wanted to kind of run down some of the names of these. The first two, the Deadly 7 and the Wayward 8. Now these ones are probably going to be released soonest out of this list. We've seen production models of these at some of the past shows. These, I think just the last one was Adepticon. They had them there, and I believe they had them at Gen Con in the fall. So those should be around the corner, up for pre-order soon. Keep our eye open for those on the website. They look cool.
Oh yeah, they look amazing. What the coolest thing is they actually got some of the actual production sprues shipped over a couple of months ago, and they gave one of the sprues over to Battlehammer.
Okay.
And you can actually watch one of their videos where they do an unboxing on those models. So you actually get to see those plastics. Those plastics look pretty good. If you watch their video, you'll see them, going over the models, and then I believe they even have a game that they've filmed, one of their battle games that they film actually using those models. So if you're interested, check out Battlehammer. They have some pretty cool stuff if you want to check it out.
Yeah, they've been covering a lot of their videos lately have been covering Wild West Exodus. So they've been showing the game a lot of love.
Right.
Well, some of the other ones they got, I'll run through a couple. Let's see if I can butcher this one. Wakasani Dark Nation. Did I say it right,
Yeah.
or did I butcher it?
It's close enough.
Close enough. So she's going to be finally getting a theme posse with the Dark Nation, with all her creatures that are locked in their, shape-shifting form, and they got all the bionics on it. I just love the grizzly bear in that army. So cool.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So her posse in particular it is mostly all new models. And one of the coolest parts of the model is it gives us a female tree walker, a female skinwalker, and one of the wickedest, coolest looking spirit animals that they've showed us to date. And it is a spider spirit walker. And she is twisted backwards.
It looks like something out of a horror movie.
Oh, no. Yeah. So she walks on her 8 limbs, but she does so like, you remember when we were in school and we'd have to do like the crab soccer where our bellies are facing the sky and you use your arms and legs? That's how she moves. And so her belly is facing up and her head is backwards over her body.
Yeah, it's like upside down staring at you.
Oh, yeah. Just so cool. And, and that is wicked. And then they have this winged guy who's in there. It's spirit energy for wings.
Okay.
So he reminds me of kind of like Ironhawk, the flamethrower in the Warrior Nation, but he's got spirit wings. So it's a new guy, but he's wicked cool.
Yeah. Well, one that I'm getting excited for is I'm getting a new posse for the Enlightened, centered around the Countess Byron. That one is called the Countess Byron's Galvanic Mysteries. And in that one, we are going to be seeing some favorites, Creation 5, but we're also getting some new creations. They have a Creation 10, we have Creation 13, and then they have Mantis in there, and of course the Countess herself. I just like the creations. I like what they do with them. It's like, what monstrosity could they come up with now with attaching guns and some kind of blades to them? And so I'm kind of excited for that one.
Right. And so I have not picked up the Countess yet. So I'm actually kind of eager because now I will not buy her and wait. And so I'll buy that set. That way I won't, have an extra, but it'll be neat to pick up those new, like you said, those new creations are going to be awesome.
Yeah. They do look pretty neat. And the poses are getting really good on them. They're very dynamic poses.
Right. Okay, so I just saw another picture. Well, we had just talked about, Waka Sensei's Dark Nation posse, but there's a new Dark Nation model that it's too big to actually put in a posse box, and that is Vorket. Do you remember this model?
Oh, yeah. That thing looks like something out of... he looks like an ogre. That's what he reminds me of. Old ogre kingdom.
This poor Warrior Nation guy, his spirit animal is the mole rat. But he kind of spends too much time at the buffet, and he's enormous. So he's not a little mole rat. He is a huge mole rat. So he looks like, size-wise, he's going to come in as big as probably Dr. Bytel. But he's going to be big around as he is tall. And he's literally munching on some poor hired hand, He's just gross. I mean that's one of the neat parts about the Hex is these monstrous models really give those really I guess great painters so much color they can jump in there because it's just gobs of details that you can just explore with paint and colors, and a mole rat with the pink flesh and all the sickly colors of purples and those weird greens. Oh, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what some of the community members do with him.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see Daz paint that one.
Yeah.
You know, the way he does his washes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that'll turn out awesome. So one of the other ones that we haven't talked about is they finally released a 3D group shot of Abe Lincoln's Secret Service posse. Now, that posse is going to have some of the favorites we already have grown to like and have seen on the table. It actually is made up of a lot of models. I actually won second place in a Wild West SS paint contest. You got Abe Lincoln, you got the Pinkerton, then you have Henry Cartwright and Lucinda Loveless. But it was a sketch and a picture that we saw many years ago at a Gen Con, and his name's Milo, and he is the Pinkerton Secret Service agent with the rocket launcher. And I've been waiting for that guy. He is just wicked cool. So it'll be neat to see this set come out because we'll get a new Secret Service agent to go along with that. And it also rounds out the posse with Blanche, who's one of the ladies of the West from the second Kickstarter, and she's an undercover agent with the Secret Service as well. So that posse set, I don't know when it's coming out. Some of the models are getting new sculpts, and then we get Milo finally. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah, and then we have a couple that are going to be for lawmen. So we have Wild Bill's Ranger Showboat Posse, and then we have something that I know you want to talk about. Helena's Infernal Investigations.
We can't skip Wild Bill's Ranger Showboat without talking about the new model that he gets to bring to bear. So you can't talk about Wild Bill without some other famous person, right?
No. Oh, no,
do you remember?
Can't. Oh, yeah. His
Calamity Jane.
His girlfriend.
Calamity Jane. We have been waiting for, I don't know how many times we've seen someone post to the forum or Facebook saying, when are we going to get Calamity Jane? When are we going to get Calamity Jane? Well, okay. So later this year, Wild Bill Ranger Showboat Posse will come with Calamity Jane. And dude, she is shaking a finger at somebody, waiting, says, no, don't bother me until I finish my whiskey. And she is chugging a bottle of whiskey. And don't tell me that's not a lot of character in that pose. It's just really cool. Rounding out that posse will be Grace Myrtle, Copley Sisters, and Nate Behringer. He was, if you don't know, he was the first community model Outlaw Miniatures did. And he's basically a veteran ranger. So he's a pretty cool model. And looks like some of these models are getting some tweaks to their details. So
some of them look,
that'll be interesting to see.
Just little minor tweaks to detail, and maybe a little bit they're moving the position of them a little bit.
Right, probably correcting some kind of detail issues. I know both my Grace Myrtle and Wild Bill, the original poses or the original models I had, they had a couple of little spots where the details didn't come out too well. Luckily, I can green stuff some issues like that, so they turned out fine when I finished painting them. Unfortunately, every model in that posse set I've already built and painted and are on the board ready to go, except for Calamity Jane. So I'll be repainting some of those.
Well, you could try a different paint scheme so they all go together, kind of thematic.
And then you teased the another lawman posse.
I teased another one, and I'm. Wow. This is all you. This is all you.
I cannot wait for this.
Toot your horn.
I cannot. Now, okay, so Helena Miller, Infernal Investigations posse. Now, drum roll. I have had some kind of insider info on this for quite a while, and so me and Stuart started talking about what I was thinking, and the Infernal Investigations idea spawned from that. And I'm not taking credit for it because we were just pitching back and forth ideas. I mentioned Internal Affairs, which is an actual cop thing, where it's something that police departments call the units that police.
Yeah.
So from that idea, War Cradle came up with infernal investigations. So these guys are the lawmen that investigate not only the lawmen, but they also are in charge of investigating the weird West. So all the strange enlightened creatures, the weird hex crazy stuff going on, anything weird outside of the norm, they call in Helena Miller and her team.
So basically anything I like to play.
Yeah. So this posse would definitely come after anything you're hitting on. Right? And I'm gonna definitely bring them to the board when we get to play again. So this posse is awesome. It has some really neat features. Most people who see this lineup, they trigger on 2020, and he is a Blackhoof from the Union Army during Civil War. So that's when they first came out with a lot of the super technology, and the Blackhoofs were one of these advanced units that they were using during the Civil War, and most of the Black Horses did not last, because obviously the Civil War was against the Union and the Confederates. The Confederates were using new technologies as well, and the Union outpaced the Blackhoofs and went to the Iron Horses and the Locusts. So what I say locusts, they're now called Iron Eagles. So they advanced into new technology, so the Blackhoofs kind of fell back. Well, so what happened was 2020, he was still serviceable, so they kind of transferred him over to the lawmen, just like all the UR-30s. So he kind of just was passed on, and 2020 kept in service. He kept getting upgrades and upgrades. Well, his basic programming soon became more than just basic. It became more sentient. So he is an active member of this posse now because of how he's been in service so long. He has become more and more his own personality. And one of the people he kind of teams up with the most often is Jedrick Powell. So Jedrick Powell is the model that I helped design. He's designed around stun batons and pistols. Can't wait. They even put him in a hooded duster. He's cool. I just can't wait for that. And then the rest of the models are all girls. So if you're out there and you always wanted a full female posse, you're going to be able to field Helena Miller and 3 other females in this posse, and you get a horse and a Jedi. So hey,
we can't tell you're not excited.
Oh, I'm so excited! I can't wait. So I've even put a posse together, and you just start proxying some models just so I can try them out.
So they have these. They have these the cards in the last update with the
yes.
Okay. As a note, the last update, the latest one that was out
right.
there with the FAQ and errata is 1.07. So, as Brian's saying, you can get the stat cards for these characters. A lot of these newer posses that are being teased and stuff, and you can kind of play around with posse building and just proxy them in and try them. So that's what you're doing already, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't help it. I saw them and I was like, I've already printed them off. I've already put them together. Know how many points it takes to get all of them on the table. Yep, it's over 1,200 points to bring them all.
Just for that posse. Wow.
Just for that posse.
That's a good size.
Oh yeah,
but they are supposed to be the elite of the elite. So
right, yeah. So it's neat. One of the team members is a sniper, so definitely going to be fun. To field that unit, see how it's going to work.
Oh, cool. Well, I think that we kind of covered all the little teaser posses coming out. So let's see. Let's move on to something else that's kind of newer that you may want to go out on the website and look for. Is they have some new product for scenery. So not that long ago, War Cradle released a series 1 of buildings that are MDF. Your basic MDF buildings that actually come pre-primed, too, to save you a little bit of time, built around their Red Oak 2-player starter. So the ones that they had come out were like your Red Oak Metalsmith, a residence. They had a building called a Cartwright, which is basically your Iron Horse garage. They had a jail, and then a post office / doctor office that came out. And they are they just released a Wave 2 that has a distillery, a prospector shack, and then there's a set that you can get that's like has scatter terrain in it. That's crates, fences, and barrels. So this new wave is basically to build on to your, their established red oak town that they had come out in the 2-player starter set. And I've gotten 2 of the buildings. I'm actually working on the jail right now. I don't have any of the new ones yet, but I really do want to get the new buildings. Look very different from your basic Wild West building. They're kind of getting more towards the outskirts of town with the distillery where you can make your moonshine and the prospector shack. They look really cool.
Yeah, the coolest part about the distillery is it would fit right in the middle of town. The way it's designed, it looks like it's full blown. Hey, this is your Shinerbach in the middle of town. It doesn't look like it's the prospector shack, but the coolest part about the prospector shack is it comes with a wagon.
Oh, that's right.
A wagon.
And an outhouse.
It is wicked cool. And an outhouse.
I don't know why I like the outhouse, but I just find it funny with an outhouse.
Yeah, that was like one of the first pieces of terrain that I scratch built was an outhouse. The only downside is I glued the door on. I didn't make it movable like all my other doors and all my other terrain that I built. So people see, one of my other buildings that I've built, and they're like, dude, why didn't you make the door open on the the outhouse? I was like, dude,
guy needs privacy, man.
And everyone's like, no, man, just like Outlaw Josie Wells, you got to put someone in there. It's like, okay.
Yeah, the wagon is kind of cool though to get. I mean, there's, it ain't gonna take long for somebody to put some horses on that or some black hoofs on that.
Oh, heck yeah. We've already had many discussions on Facebook about, put a couple of iron horses attached, or although that would probably not good for anyone riding in the back.
Seatbelts.
Definitely some black hoofs, man.
Yeah, that's a cool set. That's definitely a cool set.
Now that I have a local store that is stocking this stuff, Brian over at Space Cadets Gaming, he has already put in an order for me. I'm picking up 4 of those original 5.
Okay.
I didn't get the residents because I have some terrain that I've already built, so I'm going to basically grab all these other ones that are iconic instead of like a resident. I'm not going to need that one. I may eventually get it, but I wanted to start with the true icons that I can plug in to sit alongside my stuff. But I will probably ask to get the red oak crates and stuff, the prospector shack and distillery. May's coming up, and that's my birth month, so I'm probably going to grab those then.
Yeah, I'm slowly getting them too. It takes me forever to get them, and I'm still trying to figure out how to paint buildings myself. And it's a work in progress, but they're just beautiful. They're hard to resist getting to put on the table.
Right. So the other thing that they just rolled out is the Angry Mob, which is one of the strategic units. So it joins the 2 civilian sets. Now you can field the mob, right? So that's another strategic unit. I haven't entertained any of these yet or tried to see how they interact, but I remember watching a Battlehammer game, and they used both the civilians and the Angry Mob in their game. So it was pretty interesting. Also new are new War Cradle base toppers. The coolest is you now have a medium oval base topper set. So if you want to use some pretty cool looking, I guess I don't even know if they're resin or plastic. I'm not sure, but some base toppers for the oval bases. They have another one for your large base, and it has a large base topper, but it also has some scattered terrain.
You could always use more of that.
It looks like they're small enough to where you can actually put them on bases. Which is really cool.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And the toppers themselves look like wood planks. So kind of that boardwalk town look, which these would be perfect for, I think, for lawmen. Any lawman figures, that they're in town, protecting the town from anybody, the ruffians trying to come into town.
Right. So they look like they're similar to the original town bases that we've all had access to. They look like they've been tweaked a little bit, and some of them look really cool. Like there's one that has planks, but there's a gap in the planks, and then you see the cracked earth underneath the planks. So, and there's like a skeleton in there. But
Yeah, cool.
I really like that one because anything that adds something that some of us like myself like to paint all the details. Anything where I can get in and it just focuses draws your eye to something like that. It's really kind of cool. Since we all can't be James Wapple base creators.
Oh my God!
This kind of helps. But yeah, so there's some great things that are now available. Man, just who thought that we could get so much stuff just rolling out now?
Yeah,
it's been awesome.
One of the other cool things that I think is neat that they have on their website is it's under the blog section. There's a lot of fluff fiction that they are releasing, around certain models in the world of Wild West Exodus. And just recently, Sarah Cockwell put up a new one. She's done a few. It's a new fiction that she has on the blog called Apology, and that's all centered around her beloved Doc Holliday, which if anybody has seen Sarah's post on Facebook or, she is goofy gaga for Doc Holliday. So I'm actually surprised this is her first fiction that she's written that it's centered on Doc.
Right. So she's had a story where that she's used him a little, but I really like to see all her new stuff, and this is another really good read. Just makes me want to dive into, the rule book, the Dark Council rule book that we all got sent out.
Yeah.
And I to jump in and reread those little nuggets that they inserted in there for the Dark Council special book, because there's all these little fluff articles or fluff stories. Sarah's written some of them. There's a few other people that wrote these, and they're not in the regular rule book, but they added them in there for the Dark Council special one. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Go ahead and check those out, guys. That's pretty much all we got for the news segment this episode. But all the stuff that we listed, go ahead and make sure you check it out, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's in the world of Wild West Exodus, and keep an eye open for any of that new stuff we were talking about that they tease. They always have something pop up that you can pre-order it to make sure that you get a copy of the set or even the models.
Right. So, yeah, join me and Eric crossing fingers that for Salute, they roll out the Infernal Investigation Posse.
Oh, yes.
I think it's a long shot. I don't think he's ready yet. I think that posse is probably going to be towards the end of the summer. But, hey, maybe, who knows?
They have teased that they're supposed to release some kind of big news, so we'll see what it is, and we'll probably talk about it. So... Well, guys, I think that's going to about do it for episode 1. I think we babbled long enough. Thanks for listening and putting up with us going on and gushing about Wild West Exodus. All three of us really can't get enough of the game and love the whole world that is Wild West Exodus. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed your time at the saloon. We tried to make the segments informational but yet still fun to listen to. We still have plenty more ideas that all three of us want to try out with the show. We're just slowly trying to figure out the technical part of making a podcast. So please stay tuned. We'll probably have some more content for you as we get a little bit better at it. With that, I guess we can say our goodbyes till next time. And while you're out there in the Wild West, treasure hunting, looking for some loot, or if your posse's trying to gun down some little green men invading your town. Until next time, this is Eric, for both Brian and Tom, saying, take it easy. And while you're out there, always ride with the sun at your back and roll those crits.
Thanks for stopping by the Blackhoof Saloon, y'all. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Feel free to get a hold of us with comments or questions via the interweb, and shoot us a telegraph at blackhoofsaloon@gmail.com, or find us on the Facebook at Blackhoof WWX Podcast. Music provided for use by Ross Bugden and can be found at one of his YouTube channels, Ross Bugden Music or Ross Bugden Composer. Until your next visit, ride with the sun at your back and always roll those crits.
So there was our opener. Let me.
All right.
So
All
that
right. All right.
was. Yeah, all right. You're not in a Lincoln, are you?
I am. I'm slowly rubbing my fingers together for no reason.
We're gonna play a really cool song.
do 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 do. We need a piano player.
Yeah.
That's actually a question I was going to ask you guys if we redo the intro. Is our little tropes? Okay, who wants to be the bartender? Who wants to be the piano player? What's the other trope you find in saloons?
Hose.
Well, I was going to say the madam.
Hey, if you want to
but...
volunteer, Tom, you can be the host.
Hey, someone's got to do it.